Okay, I'm a little tired of the arguments out there against the graph view. Essentially, they go like this. Because I use a different application that doesn't have Obsidian's incredible graph view, it means graph views are dumb. It kind of sounds like sour grapes. Well, that mixed in with the stubbornness people like Copernicus were all too familiar with. But we'll get to that later. In this video, I'm going to do two things at the same time. I'm going to show you how the graph view can actually make you a better thinker, and I'm going to do that by giving you a sneak peek into one of my favorite activities, note making. If you're fairly new here, you may be asking, what is note making? Well, if note taking is leaning back and listening, note making is leaning forward and adding to the conversation. We need both, but too many of us are all wrapped up in the note taking that we don't even realize there is another way. Note making is about wrestling with the ideas you encounter and making leaps of insights across domains and interests. And all of this helps to coax you into a state of mind where you are thinking critically, creatively, connectively, generating next level amounts of insights. So, what are insights? Well, they are these valuable nuggets that are the result of us trying to make sense of things. So how do you generate more of these insights? Actually, the better question is where. Where do insights come from? The intersections. Valuable insights are generated at the crossroads of unexpected ideas. That might be why you're here at Linking Your Thinking, because in some shape or form, you have recognized that maybe you can generate a bit more value in your world with your specific situations and use cases if you can just figure out how to make these unexpected ideas connect. Okay, so how about I get on with it and actually show you how I use the graph view to think better, how my note making leads to sense making, which leads to valuable insights, unique perspectives, and a lot of joy. Okay, now that we're done with all the bombast of the opening, I'm going to settle in, I'm going to hunker down and just start note making. And I'm going to talk out loud what I'm up to, and I think we'll kind of see some cool applications of the graph view, and I hope to show how it's really helped my thinking come along. So as we're looking at the screen right now, first thing I'm going to do is just clear it out. So what I first do is I just hit this workspace that closes everything, and then just for fun I can kind of reopen. I'll resize this tag pane because I don't want it to take up too much space. And then same thing for, well, that's a good size there. Now, I want to do some note making. How do I get into that? How do I find the notes that are important to me so I can work on them? Hopefully I've kind of like tagged them with something. That would be the best approach, something I would recommend. And so something I've done is I have nested tag under state that is called develop. And it looks like I have 33 notes that have this tag. I just kind of let those things stay there. And slowly, if it is for whatever reason resonating with me, then I think to myself, hey, why not add that tag and see what happens. So let's click on this. Now what that does is it loads up a list, and usually what I like to do is collapse just so I can see all the file names nice and clean. And what we see here is a list, but that's where it becomes a little hard to work with. And it's a linear list. What if we were able to complement the list with something like the graph view? And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let me click open the graph view. And, well, that's interesting. So let me just hit tag. Oh, wow, I didn't even have to type anything. I just hit a couple tags and I've pulled up my nested tag, state develop. And now we see this pretty cool graph. I know it's small for you right now, so don't worry, I will be zooming in. But what I want to point you to is how I'm using both a linear list and a graph view together. So now let's collapse the right side, give us a little bit more room, collapsing that. And let's get rid of this filter so we can see a little bit better. So what are we looking at here? Let's get our bearings. In the center, we have the tag that we decided to search, and that is in this cyber cyan color. And then any real existing note is this yellow, neon yellow. And then if it's a note that hasn't been created yet, it is purple. Our lines are faded blue, and then we have little tiny arrows there that you can't really see, indicating the direction. So this gives us a nice starting point, and we can consider how we want to have a fun note-making session. So I'm actually going to get rid of the sidebar right now so I can even zoom in further. I'm just going to start looking around and kind of see what the low-hanging fruit is, the stuff that's going to be fun to jump into. So skin in the game, that looks enticing. Priming, okay, that's always a good one. So I see a lot of concepts here that make me perk up, and that's kind of what I want in this space. Something, what do we have here? Emergence is seen in large groups. What was I thinking there? Ants, bees, birds, trees, and humans. Okay, well, actually, recently, I've been kind of getting into mycelium, and I actually have a note on that, so I'm just going to link it right away, mycelium. And along with that is, I think, wow, look at that. Mushrooms as medicine. So let's open this one up too. I know the graph view is getting a little small. I have some notes that I took. This is all messy, but I was listening to a couple of the talks by Paul Stamets, who's a pretty fascinating individual. And I took thoughts, and I need to make sense of these thoughts, but here they are. And this is in a state of saying it needs to be developed. But wow, I took this note way before this one. So this is actually perfect. So emergence is seen in large groups. Ants, bees, birds, trees, and humans. And, well, really, this thing called mycelium. And that's quite interesting to me. So, I mean, if I were to kind of collect some links for later, I could say, related or relevant, and do I have a Paul Stamets? I do, note. And then I'm just collecting things, so I have on hand things I want to make sure I can pull up. A little note is, if you are in this nice edit view, you're on a Mac, you can hold down Command and then hover over a link, and then you can get a preview. This guy is fascinating, admirable, and brilliant. Okay, it looks like I have a high opinion of Paul Stamets currently. And then mushrooms as medicine. Paul Stamets is the clear leader in this field. As we see, it's over here. So I'm thinking out loud. Emergence is seen in large groups. Well, for one, it's just nice to connect it. This note was on an island. It had 0 connections, and now I have some connections. It's nice to see that. I'm not even going to go into the local graph. I'll try not to. But now we would have some nice local graph connections too. And this all stemmed from this view, from using a tag and then looking around. But let's dive further into this. So a little bit of work so far, nothing major, but pretty happy just to have made some connections. So if we go back to the graph view, now we see that mushrooms as medicine is connected to emergence is seen in large groups. So we've made, what would you call that shape? I guess it would be a triangle. So that's kind of cool. So between these two notes and the tag, we've triangulated something. That's interesting. Maybe we'll come back to that. What else should we explore? I mean, so many good ones. We chronically underestimate how long something will take. And so I'm just feeling myself like, what is the soft wall to push against to get the ball rolling, to kind of get in that state of flow? Great works are flavored by early works. Okay, this is fairly recent, and it took me a while to get to this. Before I got to this, I was working on some pretty cool, well, I haven't looked at that yet, but I was watching some pretty interesting things about art history, about Rodin and how he was heavily influenced by Michelangelo. And Rodin made the Thinker, that famous statue. But it wasn't his first one. And that was fascinating to me. So wait, he did a lesser version of his famous work earlier in his life? That reminds me of a lot of people, including Beethoven, whose Ninth Symphony in the fourth movement, that the famous Ode to Joy, na 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 na. Well, that actually is something that he developed much earlier in a choral of his. And I think that's so fascinating, how you don't have to be perfect right out of the box. I don't know, that your magnus opus isn't your first work. And I wanted to talk about that. So here was me thinking about it. Obviously, writing is rewriting, but I kind of just was playing with that concept. Creation is iteration, refactor, incubate, rework, don't use remix. If writing is rewriting, then thinking is rethinking, and creating is recreating. I don't know how much I believe that, but there it is. This goes to show that, I do believe this, many of the best ideas are the ones you've already had. You just have to revisit them. That's where a tool like this comes in handy. And then I keep working on it. Your great works might be reworked from your earlier works. Great works are reworked from early works. Your great works are flavored by early works, which takes me here. And that's kind of where I want to be right now. Early works develop the complex flavors in the broth of later greater works. So at the very least, I want to say, list of people who fall under this. And I already mentioned Rodin and Beethoven. In fact, I think they're both in here. Is Rodin? No, I guess he's not yet. So I'll add him later. And then, there was somebody else. Well, I think Picasso is another interesting version of this, slightly different. But these are at least a few people that I want to start tethering to this concept in my mind, because I don't know, when you look at people's great works, sometimes they knock it out of the park when they're really, really young, but usually it's something that has been flavored and marinated for a while. So anyways, that was fun. Now let's go back to the graph view and see where that takes me next. So, this is it, folks. This is some note making. This is me making sense of things, making connections. I don't remove the develop tag from either of the two notes that I've worked on so far because, frankly, I'd like to develop them further. And they're really not getting in the way. They're actually kind of all mixing together in this melting pot that we see in the graph view here. So just little bits and pieces. I kind of hit a wall mainly because I'm narrating as I go, but it's a nice start. So I'm kind of happy with that. Okay, where to go next? Let me think. Ooh, I like this one. Castilians are fragile. What does that even mean? I'm about to get into that. Oh gosh, but I remembered one. Okay. Great works are flavored by early works. How could I forget? Because I really have been it's one of these guys, Hermann Hesse. Oh, looks like I already have a link on him. So maybe we open up Herman's note. I don't have anything there. If you did have a template or something, you could, put in that. And for the sake of this video, I'm going to refrain from going on the internet, but I actually would just put a little bit of a, wiki from Google search or DuckDuckGo. I would put in the paragraph and just paste it there, just so I have something. It's a thing note, and it allows me to very quickly and easily connect Hermann Hesse to other things. But the thing that I want to make some sense out of right now, anyways, is, what do I want to say? Here's the thing that I've always found fascinating about Hesse's work is that they're all kind of the same. If you're in your early 20s, you should definitely read Siddhartha, and, it's great for any stage of life. But it's funny how Hesse's work evolves, and eventually he wins the Nobel Prize for his potentially magnus opus, the Glass Bead Game. And the Glass Bead Game, that's interesting. Okay, hold on a second. I was just talking about, so this hit me. I was about to fall asleep one night and I was like, oh, it makes so much sense. Castalians are fragile. And this is an insight, right? It's an atomic note. It's something that I want to capture. So I just quickly captured it and I hit state develop. And you're probably wondering, what the heck are Castalians? What is this even about? Well, it's actually a Hermann Hesse work. So, above the wiki, this is some good work here. And usually I'd like to go online and maybe just get a paragraph to kind of help flesh out a note, especially early on. But works. And there is Siddhartha, which I might misspell. I have misspelled, but we'll fix that later. Siddhartha. And then the Glass Bead Game. And this I do have as a note already, because there it is, the Glass Bead Game. Let's open that up. My thoughts. Glass beads are pillars of thoughts. Groundedness, how to synthesize, contemplative versus via activa. Okay, two different modes of being. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. In the world of the Glass Bead Game, it's in some unknown future, and this was published in 1943. And dates are important because dates influence the author's mindset. Of course they do. It's the context that this came out in. So if you think about what was happening growing up through the First World War and now the Second World War, in the middle of it, and this book is being crafted and put together, that obviously influenced Hermann Hesse. Okay, that's worth keeping in consideration. In this world, our protagonist, Joseph Connect, which I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's kind of one of those double entendres. Connect is his last name, as we see right here. He was a powerhouse in Castalia. He was the best. He was the master of the Glass Bead Game. And what is the Glass Bead Game? Well, it's a way to connect ideas. Very, very eerily similar to what many of us are currently doing in our knowledge management systems. But here's the thing. Joseph Connect is, they call him Magister Ludi. He's the master of the game. But in the real world, outside of Castalia, because I haven't said this yet, but Castalia, it's kind of like in the mountains. It's away from everything. It is the proverbial, metaphorical ivory tower. So here where we have pure academics. And there's a problem with that, because when those academics re-enter the real world where we all live, their thinking becomes fragile. And we see this all the time, I think, in, what do they call that? Academies. This sort of academic writing that isn't as helpful as it could be. And that's why, the philosophies of the ancients still have so much impact, because they were a little bit more straightforward than some of the stuff that has happened in the last 100, 150 years, where it becomes so abstract and obtuse, and who are they even talking to, and how does this relate to living a good life? It gets in the way of things. And that's Castalia. That's playing the Glass Bead Game for the sake of the Glass Bead Game. And when Connect goes into the real world, he's fragile. I don't want to give away the ending, but it's, he's a powerhouse in one world, he's fragile in the next. Castalians are fragile. I make that connection, and it allows me to start making sense of things during this note-making session. So Castalians are fragile. I connected it to anti-fragility. What else do I want to connect it to, just so I can think a little bit? So if I'm just going to quickly do some note-making, tidy that up. Connect, powerhouse, Glass Bead Game. See, I'm just going to put in some actual links now, because I just made this note and then I fell asleep. So what else? See, I'm just going to go add the connections now. It doesn't mean I keep all these links, because I want to tidy it up, but I'm just kind of throwing them on the workbench, and this note becomes a mini workbench that I can work from and relate it to anti-fragility. So obviously, if I'm putting in fragile there, I have in my mind that I might want to relate it to this. So I've already talked out most of my thoughts that I intended to type here. So if you think about what I just said for the past few minutes, that is what I would type here. But because I'm both dictating and trying to, work in this system at the same time, a little difficult. But just rest assured, the stuff I'm saying out loud is the stuff that I would be typing right here, and that I will be typing after this recording finishes. So let's keep moving on and see where it takes us. So with that in mind, let's get back to the graph view. We still have on our tag for note making that I use, which is develop here. And I'm looking around, and even though Castalians are fragile, it has a bunch of links. So that's worth noting. If I were to open up this sidebar, we would see that I'm going to do a local graph and just close that out a little bit. And we can see the links that Castalians are fragile are linking to. Just want to show that really quickly. And I'm looking around. What can I make sense of? I mean, seriously, these could not be better placed together. I need to make this connection immediately. And that's why I love the graph view, is because this is a perfect example of how I'm going to triangulate two different things. Do you see what I'm looking at here? Can you see the connection? Tell me if you see a connection here. Castalians are fragile, and there's a concept, skin in the game. Skin in the game. I threw in a wiki entry and I left it alone. To have incurred, well, I'm not going to read all that. Basically, the reason, oh, wow, okay, this is cool. So, Castalians are fragile. Why are they fragile? Why are they fragile? Well, it's simple. They don't have what? What don't they have? You got it. Skin in the game. Boom. They don't have skin in the game. They're up there just dilly-dallying around in their ivory tower. They don't have skin in the game. Get in the real world. Put yourself at risk. If you have risk, you got skin in the game. And if you're at risk, you better believe that that person's going to give you more of themselves, whatever the reason is for, because they have their own skin in the game. Castalians are fragile because they don't have skin in the game. Ah, I love it. That's a valuable insight. That is an unexpected idea that has generated value. An unexpected crossroads of ideas. Wow. So anyways, that's pretty cool. Let's kind of get to the close on this, though. There was a point I wanted to make, and I know for a fact that I had a note in here, so let me try to find it. And, there's just so many fun notes, by the way. I could just go off. We could hop into Groundhog Day, the movie, wonderful movie. And I've always been wanting to kind of link it a little bit more specifically to Buddhism. I know the links are there. It's obvious there's this cycle of suffering, stages of samsara, but I kind of want to nail that a little bit more, and I haven't had the time just yet. So I'll come back to that later. This dude, Schopenhauer, he's awesome. One of my favorite thinkers. I connected his will to something that certainly sounds like Dawkins' selfish gene, but I wanted to develop that, so I have some ideas on that. Won't approach that right now, but I'm just trying to show you how I'm gliding around, looking for things. This is a long time to develop in the making, Plato's cave and how it relates to the Matrix and all that stuff. But the one I really wanted, because I just think this is so interesting, the Almagest, a book from so long ago, from 150 AD, CE. It's a 2nd century Greek language, mathematical, and astronomical treatise by Ptolemy. And what is so fast? Okay, for one, Ptolemy's work was excellent. It was really ahead of its time. And for 1,000 years around, his ideas about how the planets revolved around the Earth was considered canon. It was considered fact. And that's so weird, because for it to be considered fact, even at that time, you would have had to accept the non-fact that the moon becomes twice as big and twice as small, that it's moving like this over the course of a single year. And just by observing the moon throughout the course of the year, we can realize it doesn't grow like that. It stays the same size, and that's because it's the same distance away from Earth all the time. So how come everyone in the world considered it to be fact? That's what's worth exploring in this book to me, among other things, of this collection of ideas and books. And so why was that? Well, let's explore. And that's where I start opining, making opinions about this foundational text. It shows our ability to problem solve. It shows that if it practically works, it's more believable. So why was everybody believing so strongly in the Almagest? And it's because it served a practical purpose. Everything that was written in these treatises, a lot of it was about star positions at the course of every moment in the year. And you could navigate the open seas successfully with these star positions that were mapped out in the Almagest. And that allowed you to what? Stay alive, so you didn't crash into the rocks. And this is so fascinating. Why? Because part of the Almagest's theory was that we, planet Earth, are at the center of the universe and everything rotates around us. So you can imagine as the evidence starts to refute that, and Copernicus comes along and says, actually, we and the other planets rotate around the sun. How come that wasn't accepted, even though Copernicus had a lot of proof, and even though Kepler comes along and Galileo, and they all contribute all this evidence to something? How come there were people that were still resisting this? Well, that's what I was trying to figure out. Be careful what you believe, because your beliefs exert mind control over you. Okay, that's a thought I had. Even in the face of overwhelming evidence, belief finds a way. I think really this hits at the fact that things like geocentrism and that stubbornness to hold on to our old beliefs, it shows our vanity, our ego, and really our narcissism. And I'm not trying to level that claim at anybody, But when we consider only having a list view at our disposal, as opposed to complementing that list view with, I don't know, a pretty cool graph, if you ask me, that's a pretty valuable thing. The unmatchable benefit of the graph view has been on full display during this session. Can you figure out what it was? In 1 word and 5 syllables, triangulation. In 2 words, but still 5 syllables, spatial context. So let's explore triangulation now. In fact, I know it happens to be one of the notes I'm working on. There it is, there's the tag. It's basically the process of determining the location of a point by knowing a couple other points. And I find triangulation so fascinating because I think it's one of the reasons we really like reading the comments about something that we're watching, say a YouTube video. We like seeing the comments on those videos. We like seeing when somebody's giving us reactions to the thing that we're watching, because if we're watching something and we're getting commentary on the thing that we're watching, 2 points, and then we're right here. We can now triangulate and make sense of that. And that exact thing is happening in the graph view. And it's fascinating. So we go back to the graph view, we see that triangulation happening. Specifically, we actually created a triangle when we connected, what was it? We connected Castellians are fragile with skin in the game. We triangulated live during this session. And that was like, whoa, that is the value of these. That's how we generate value, when we have these unexpected interactions. Isn't that pretty cool? And finally, spatial context. If you're wondering what spatial context is, that's how the ancients, the Greeks and the Romans, made these memory palaces in their brain. Why does that work? Well, we are a species that works well with spaces, with understanding how we are in a physical environment. And the same things work in our imaginations, in our mental environments. If we can harness and utilize a sense of spatial context between ideas, just like we can between predator and prey, between this and that in the physical realm, if we can do that, I think we can remember better. I think we can recall better. And I think it allows us to think more laterally, where we can be more tangential with our thinking, more metaphorical, more creative, and come up with these amazing, valuable insights. And that's why the graph view is such a worthy addition to our knowledge management efforts. Sure, we still listen to the radio, but once TV came along, we had to kind of recalibrate how much we did of each. Now compare everything that we've just done with only being able to have a linear list. Of course, lists still have value. Lists aren't going away. I love lists. But that graph view, it enables you to see in ways you really can't see with a list. It encourages you to think metaphorically. It allows you to Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. It allows you to casually make references to a Star Trek episode to make a point. And that point is that the graph view encourages you to think laterally and to think metaphorically. And that type of thinking is worth strengthening because, 1, it encourages you to develop your unique perspective, and 2, insights are generated at these unexpected intersections. And that value can be harnessed in countless ways. It can enrich your personal experiences. It can make you a wiser person. It can unlock a solution to a current problem you're having, or it can be a start of a beautiful new business endeavor. Through note-making sessions like this and the Linking Your Thinking workshop, my goal is to help strengthen and hone your ability to think fluidly and flexibly, and most of all, joyfully. A healthy world needs citizens who think, who question, who develop thoughts and ideas over time and build bridges across different domains of personally meaningful insights. If you want to know where value is created, look to the bridges, and you might just find them in the graph view. So I'm told I should be saying you should subscribe to the newsletter and sign up for the workshop waiting list. So if you feel like you found something special here, then click on the links below and get one step closer to connecting with a curious collection of captivating people. And until next time, stay connected.